Bwana. So, Mheshimiwa, you are in the second Senate of the Republic. The
First.
See, they say the first one is at 1963.
Okay, is that it?
I was like, huh? They're
Under
saying
the new constitution is the first Senate.
Under the new constitution, this is the first Senate.
Yeah.
You are there alongside Beatrice Elachi, who was also in the same. And when people saw each other, you were saying hello to each other, calling each other boss, chairman, whip, boss. Okay, so both of you are here. Before you went to Senate, you had also served in the National Assembly. And those were the Kibaki years. So you are in a National Assembly that had one president, you are in a Senate that had a different president, and now you're here as an elder statesman witnessing a new president taking office. We are here to talk about the differences that we've seen with those presidencies, and then what we expect to see into the next president. Rigathi Gachagua, the deputy president-elect, is about to leave Karen, heading towards Kasarani. The president-elect also will be leaving Karen shortly, heading towards Kasarani. After that, they move to State House and Karen, respectively. That's where the residences will be. And their offices, perhaps. If you look at what Uhuru has done, he has operated mostly from State House. Good thing or bad thing?
Bad thing.
Why?
I remember one time, Beatrice was there. We had a meeting, a parliamentary group meeting with the President Uhuru. And I remember telling him that he's probably the most inaccessible president this country has ever had, because he was always holed up in the State House. And if leaders wanted to meet him, it would be very difficult. You know, that's the wisdom behind having Harambee House office. That's where the president should roll up his sleeves and be working. From and Kenyans, you know, leaders and even other state officers, the public should have access to him, so that you know, those who are by law required to report to him, those whom he's required to, you know, speak to in terms of their performance and so forth, and leaders who also need to interact with the president. Particularly the political leaders. And this is where there was a disconnect, a huge disconnect between the political leaders who supported him and the president, because you need to, you know, there are certain pledges that have been made when you are campaigning together by the people, you know, for the people, and you need to meet the president. You need to apprise him of what's going on in your area. You need to, but State House is not a really accessible place. You can only go there by appointment. And even then, it's not easy to get an appointment. You know, you can ask any leader in this country how many times you've been to State House. It's probably when there is a meeting called by the president himself. That's probably the only time you'll have, unless you're in one of the kitchen cabinets, if you will. But very few, again, in terms of Uhuru's style of leadership. You would find it hard to know which political leader would be his kitchen cabinet, or always people, mostly people outside the political leadership. So that disconnect allowed his deputy to outshine him, because the Harambee House annex was always available. At any time you walked in, you didn't need an appointment. You just walk in. You know, MPs are always there. You know, and he sees anyone who walks in. So I think that accessibility for a leadership is also important, particularly in a country where politics plays a significant role in their lives.
I have this question, Mheshimiwa. But now that was the role of Dr. William Ruto as the deputy president. Now, as the president, is it possible to do the same thing?
To be as accessible as
accessible as
you know, every time you're sitting at your waiting room, you're walking out of your waiting room, there are 15 people all wanting to see you.
Absolutely not. He cannot do what he was doing when he was the president. But he can do a lot better than what Uhuru did in terms of accessibility. And again, you see the lifestyle of the individual also makes a huge difference. I know, I've worked with these people. I mean, when we were in Kanu, in the opposition together in the first parliament in 2003, William Ruto is someone who is up at 4 a.m. At 6, he'll be seated in the office. So you would expect, you know, somebody who gets to work that early to also have some free time, you know, in terms of being able to meet, and you're not meeting with people for stories. I mean, you're meeting people so that you can connect and find out what is so that you're not out of touch with reality.
It's work related.
Yeah, it's work related. You need to also be in touch with reality, so that when you, even as you deal with the issues of the nation, you need to know what's going on in different parts of the. You remember how Moi used to be. He would know. He had a way of connecting with his DCs in the remotest of places. So I think that interaction is critical, and I think he will still have to find some time, but of course not as freely as he was when he was deputy president.
When he becomes
Uhuru was our party leader.
Yes.
And I was the head of finance minister. I know. And Uhuru, I remember as our chairman saying in Parliament, you remember that famous statement. Uhuru said, "This is a hands off, ears off." You know, that was the first time of the president when his lieutenants were the ones who were running the show. But in the second term, Uhuru, Kibaki was literally running everything from Harambee House, and he was more hands-on. And the thing about being hands-on is not necessarily the one-to-one, but he had regular cabinet meetings in his second term, you know, and cabinet meetings where you can at least hold your officers to account. Here is Uhuru, where cabinet meetings are few and far between. Probably one meeting this year and another one probably towards the end of the year. And I think it had nothing to do with. I think the question you asked about delegation. Yeah, you delegate. Delegation is part of management, you know. But I don't think for Uhuru it was delegation per se. I think he just wasn't available. His time was largely taken up by his own social lifestyle, if you will, and so he wasn't.
So he wasn't available for the job.
Readily available, yes, to hold. You know, when you delegate, you need to
be receiving reports. You need to be.
Because ultimately you're still responsible.
You're here to be saying that in addition to his duties as the president, he had other competing duties.
Of course. I mean, you know it. I don't know it.
If we look at the incoming administration,
yes.
If we look at the incoming administration, as we see the way in which things played out during the campaign, it looks as though there is an expectation on the sides of those who rallied themselves around soon-to-be President William Ruto, and that they expect that there will be reciprocity for their support. Now, having worked with during the campaigns, having worked with him, would you see that he will appoint people to serve in positions based on their capacity to deliver, or on this assumed reciprocity because of their support from the campaign?
I think one of the main challenge William Ruto will face, in my view, is how to manage expectations, because it's really insurmountable. The amount of expectations he created across the country in the last few years campaigning, how he's going to handle that is going to be his biggest nightmare. On the question you asked, I think he's a politician. And this is a gentleman who focuses more on the political aspects of these things than anything else. And I don't think he will, in that regard, go for technocrats per se and leave out, the
his
political, he will have to support his political supporters. He'll have to appoint people on political, reciprocity. He'll have to balance regional interests. He has to balance people on the basis of the roles that they played, and he has to. I can assure you.
So then, will he still be hands-on? The way you talk about him being hands-on, Beatrice says, he can walk into your office and ask you, "Hey, what's going on?" Will he then be able to wield that same hand over his friends? Because this is essentially what it is. I'm going to offer CT a job because of the support that he accorded me. And then here I am, and I'm going to come and crack the whip over the same gentleman. Will he be able to do that?
As the British say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. We will see it, but I can tell you, it's easy to say something now when you're campaigning, but it's not going to be easy to
deliver it,
to implement that, and those are the challenges that he's going to face. Because I don't think William, you've seen in the campaign, has been overprotective of his supporters. Even those who have been charged, with the corruption in court cases, he has always stood by them saying, no, these guys are being victimized. It's political persecution and so forth. So I think you've seen how he has jumped into issues on the Kim Warrior and all those things. And he's not a guy who will stand by in terms of lending support to his political supporters. But we'll see whether that changes, because this now is different. I mean, it's easy to say that during campaigns and when you're a DP, but when you are the one to whom everything, the buck stops. So
Things are going to be tough.
things are not going to be that easy.
I think one of the toughest ones that he has to face immediately is the promise that he made, 50% of my cabinet is going to be women. Now, if you look at the number of people who've been campaigning with him and alongside him, many of them are men. So we are saying about all those men plus the other technocrats are basically fighting for 11 positions at the senior most level.
Yeah.
Hey. Uh-huh.
Yeah, he promised. He has to deliver.
That one should be
Yes.
easy for him to deliver.
Yeah.
Appointing 11 women to cabinet.
Appointing 11 is not a problem.
It's not a problem.
It's which 11 men?
Which 11 men will he choose? Which 11 will he choose from the myriad of men that are waiting and hoping?
He needs to
that-
tell some of them to go
Exactly.
and apply as principal secretaries. I saw they had given an advice.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, he has.
What I didn't understand, I thought principal secretaries, are they normally on contract or they're public servants? I don't know.
It's
They're
on
on a
contract.
5-year.
Their tenure ends. It's a 5-year tenure.
I thought CSs are the ones who go as 5 years.
It's going to be a very delicate balancing act for him, because there are a lot of people who expect to join a cabinet. But we remember when Uhuru and Ruto started in 2013. They ended up picking a lot of bureaucrats, and they didn't have many of their supporters in the cabinet.
They only picked
Absolutely.
two.
And they insisted that they want, people who are from public service employees, or people who are from the private sector,
Yeah.
technocrats. But so if I don't think he'll have difficulty. The political supporters will likely end up in other state institutions or state corporations, other offices, embassies, and other places. And so there are many ways in which he can reward them. But it's not going to be easy. Yes, putting 11 half the cabinet like the previous constitution. It's not about politics. You must have some sort of qualification relevant to the ministry that you're going to be given. And so here you have to choose from those people, those who have, have relevant experience, because they have to go to parliament again for vetting. This is again something that was not there before. So you just can't appoint Eric. You have to see whether Eric can go through
the
parliament.
nomination
And you've seen
process.
all the fuss about qualifications and past history. Thirdly, there is the issue of integrity. I mean, this election was. There was a lot about integrity in this election, you remember, and so he wants to also disprove what Azimio and others have been saying about his integrity. So he has to try and take that into account and get people who have not been implicated one way or the other. So I think there are many factors. That's why I'm saying.
And regional
it's not going to
balance,
be-
like you said.
Yeah?
And regional balance.
And regional balance is the fourth one. The constitution requires you to look at, regional and ethnic and other considerations when you are making appointments to state office. Yeah. So when you look at all that, then the 11 men and the 11 women will have to be.
It's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one.
I personally see William Ruto playing a game with the public like he did with the choice of running mate. He already knows who he's going to appoint to his cabinet by now. He knows.
Yeah.
But he will play that game with us, publicly, just allowing people to do the shuffling up here and there, and then final minute comes and say, you see now the people want us to go this way. That same game that he played with at 48 hours of indecision in Karen before he landed on Rigathi Gachagua. Oh, come on. I never bought that for a single minute. That he polls here, polls there. Professor Kithure Kindiki is emerging leader. Oh, no, let's do another poll. Kithure Kindiki, hey, how about we call the MPs and ask them, Another poll.
What do you think?
You too. Why don't you agree as gentlemen? They
Eric-
don't agree.
Eric,
Then it's like,
what you've just spoken, what you've said in many words, is that the deputy president, the president-elect, and soon to be president, understood public participation.
Yeah. Incidentally, it's not only William Ruto who was playing that game. I think Azimio also.
Azimio was playing the same.
It was known
They did
weeks and months
interviews.
earlier that
Yeah.
Martha Karua was going to be the deputy.
so these
But,
interviews were just a farce.
Yeah, but you know certain
It's
things.
good to do them.
Certain,
Public participation.
yeah, it's a PR number one, but two, it's not. They're not doing it for public participation, but it's more of a PR, like you said, to try and convince Kenyans that they have really gone out of their way to look at
But
all
I think
options.
as-
Breeds psychophancy.
Exactly.
And we've seen quite a bit of that even in Uhuru's last 5 years. I don't think that's what we want. We have seen it during Moi, and we don't want. We've seen zero to psychophancy during the time of Kibaki, and the performance was better. You only need someone who really needs to hold people to account, and you need, that's what is important. Leaving people to do whatever they want. Hands off completely is what would put this country in trouble. But I think the new president may overlook some of the 4 items we mentioned. For example, he has control of both houses of parliament. So I see a situation where he would probably not put a lot of emphasis on the issues of integrity,
No.
especially if there has been no conviction.
Yeah.
That Beatrice has been mentioned in some report of the Auditor General. They might, if there's no conviction, they would argue that's not, ground for not appointing Beatrice into the cabinet.
Yeah.
He might look at that, and he might also, because he has the House, the Parliament, to approve all those. Parliament is where those requirements can be put to test.
Yeah.
That's where you don't rubber stamp. Unfortunately, in the 5 years of Uhuru, the parliament became a rubber stamp, literally. And we know, Beatrice knows, we were there, that National Assembly was influenced by State House to approve those appointments, whether or not those people
Suitable or not, it's not the case.
Not only cabinet, but you've seen even some various commissions and so forth. So I think that is the sad thing. And then you come around, and the one I can remember most, was like Chebukati. You remember? He was not among the top names really that should have been considered for appointment as the chairman. But on the when you look at political expediency, you look at your own other interests, and you tell Parliament, I want that guy. So if Parliament carries out its oversight responsibility independently, we can see a lot of change in this country.
But you've already preempted that and said
I have preempted.
it's unlikely.
I have preempted.
It's unlikely that this will happen. Let's take a break. Bwana Architect is saying, kindly ask the guests what they think the new administration will do in the fight against corruption, if at all there will be any attempt to fight corruption. We'll talk about that when we come back out of this break.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Now, our guests this morning, Beatrice Elachi, MP, Dagoretti North, and former Senator Bill Okero. We're looking into the future and seeing if we can predict how the fifth administration of the Republic will be like. First question here on corruption. Do you think there will be an attempt to fight corruption?
Would you have, if you're the president, you control both houses? So legislation, the decision-making process is at your behest. You see, let me explain why I'm taking this train of thought. I'm looking at ANC, probably Africa's oldest political party. 1994, they just fall short of a two-third majority, 62% of the vote. Okay?
Yeah.
You give it 20 years. That was them 20 years. You look at the rating and the voting dropping. In 2021, they got below 50% for the first time. And they lost major towns. It had been coming. But it was because of mismanagement, of graft, and everything that you can think of. Other parties that nobody even gave any time of day started gaining prominence. Now I'm saying, there is a trap and there's a problem when you have that sort of majority. Because the check and balance that ordinarily would be there would not be there. And if you know our Kenyans, forgive me for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. You politicians and the wind capacity that you seem to have, moving in whatever direction the wind blows, even when it isn't blowing, you still move in that direction. When somebody has that amount of power, it isn't difficult to tell where the politicians will lean towards. You don't even need to coerce people.
But I think William Ruto is in the situation where Kibaki was in 2003. You know, a very rare opportunity when you have the entire public mood, you know, against graft and the expectations are high. Two, you have a lot of support, really, you know, on the ground, particularly from ordinary Kenyans.
Including the opposition.
Including even the opposition that will probably, after today, will be more or less decimated. So I think he has that opportunity then with that goodwill. You know, he has the goodwill the way Kibaki had to act. Kibaki didn't act, you remember, in his first 5 years. Within months, they were in Anglo leasing, and 5 of his cabinet ministers were the casualties. That temptation is there that when you have got into power, those around you will want to try and make money immediately. You know, that temptation would be there. That's something he needs to fight. And number two, he has come out very clearly in his manifesto, and I think he's the kind of person who doesn't want to be seen to fail. You know, there are people who want to be seen to have succeeded. Yeah. And since the biggest challenge has been what they call state capture, you know, where government has been used to favor you, you know, to make money or business. So I think this gentleman has an opportunity, and I see him trying to act in that regard. One, two, the institutions have been compromised, and there's no. Everyone knows that those institutions have been really compromised, and they were acting. You know, the actions were more or less weaponized and so forth. But I think he has an opportunity, as he said very clearly, that one, he's going to empower them in terms of resources. And two, he has an opportunity to change them. You know, the people who are running the leadership in those institutions. And therefore, and get them to start biting hard on at least new corruption. I don't want to say amnesty, but I want to say he can stop new corruption.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Take an amnesty and stop.
Without even giving amnesty, those old ones can still remain in the continue.
Which ones?
Draw the line.
The ones that are going on can go on. But he must stop new
corruption.
Listen, Bilo, you bring up the resource issue, and I think that's a big one today. That, you know, this is nice, the fanfare, the inauguration, as important as it is. I mean, bringing in a new president and, you know, taking the oath of office. But then it's not an envious position either, because he takes on a country that is heavily in debt. Takes on a country where the cost of living is right now extremely high. And I'm looking at these, it just hit me right now that I'm looking at these crowds of people at Kasarani who are going to wake up tomorrow morning, even as they cheer and the whole country is in this jubilant mode. They're going to wake up tomorrow morning and the expectation is going to be, all right, now feed us. 1, 2, there's this huge debt. Number 3, the question is, there have been promises that unfortunately are hedged on heavy funding. Heavy funding. These promises that
Hustlers
have been made,
own their money immediately.
People voted. People came out in droves because they knew, look, we put our vote here, our life is going to get better. And this betterment of life, it comes with the spending of the shilling. And it said that there's none right now. You're a money man, Bilo. So
where's the money?
How do you think that he's really going to be able to handle this?
When I was asked that question a few years ago, I think 2018, I said the money is with the Chinese. But if you look at my article today, that's the heading. It says Kenyans need food on the table right now.
Yes.
You know, and I think tomorrow, let's start from tomorrow. When he reports to office, he needs to do something with the fuel. Because if that subsidy goes, you know, you'll be at 200 shillings a litre plus. In fact, I'm told things like diesel is almost 66 shillings. The subsidy is 66 shillings. So that will take it over 200. So on the food, he already said yesterday, he also has to get that subsidy back. But and on power and so many, of course, the expectations are huge. This is what I said, that is the biggest challenge, managing those expectations. But, you know, the good thing, let me tell you, this government of Uhuru, the one thing that they've been doing is the collection of tax. Collection of taxes has been improving, largely because of duties and VATs at the ports, because of cost of raw materials and so forth. And they have the money. The part of that money, or a huge chunk of that money, 60-70% of it will go to service loans. But I think what he needs to do, which Uhuru was not doing, is to stop what Uhuru was calling legacy projects. Wasting money on projects, not wasting, putting money in projects that are not a priority. And so there was nothing left. Uhuru had no time about bread and butter issues. Uhuru doesn't know about this cabbage on the street. Uhuru knows about, he wants
the expressway and the railway.
How to get to the airport.
Yeah.
And Kenyans can't afford the 300 shillings that it takes to go from JKA to Westlands.
Port, 50 billion shillings in Lamu, which is a white elephant.
Well, that was
railways,
by
that's
Kibaki,
what you guys said is a road to nowhere. The thing is, the whole thing about revenue, the governments do not have the mandate to tax people the way they want. You tax as the people want, and that is why Parliament is there. You remember when we were in school, those things about there's no representation without tax, there's no taxation without representation. The essence of tax is you collect the amount that the people want to pay, so that they can remain with something in their pocket to run their lives. But when your representatives have given up on that, and they approve every project that comes, and then so the expenditure was huge. There was a huge budget deficit. The government was borrowing because of that budget deficit. So the one thing this guy needs to do is say, stop expenditure. I don't want those roads and those things wait. Let us put food on the table. Yes, let's provide water. Let's provide medicine. Let us deal school fees. People can pay school fees. He can. If he does that, then he can raise his 50 billion for the Hustlers Fund. He can do all those little things. But if he says, I want to complete Big Four, which he's been saying, he's going to be in a doldrums. I can tell you that.
But yes, I agree with what you're saying. But have we not complained to the point of getting hoarse that the problem may not even be, yes, the projects are an issue, but it's what they eventually cost us.
Inflated.
Yes, and also what we call crony economics and just crony politics, where you have people around you and there is this incessant need to have them benefit from the system. And we know what that amounts to. So even with those good intentions, the moment you throw this in, the money may even be collected, but where on earth does it go to? Yes.
Yeah, we need a government. What you're saying is we need properly functioning government, not a crony state.
Yes.
What we have seen in the last few years of this administration is dysfunctional, totally dysfunctional.
Yeah.
I mean, especially the last 5 years. You had government that was pulling in different directions. So with the deputy and some team on one side, and the whole 5 years spent on fighting. I mean, that's not running.
I hope
government.
it will never happen again.
That's so. We need a government, that runs, not a government that is there to serve an individual. Kibaki said, government is not there to serve. I mean, people are not there to serve government. It is government that is there to serve the people. I think if he does not bring back that culture of government, an efficient system running, he can say all the big words, but we'll be, after 5 years, back to where we were.
Has he ever said anything that would show you that he's actually going to do that?
Not what he said, as much as what I know about the gentleman. I work with all these guys. I work with all these guys. But let me tell you, he's a worker. He's different from his style is completely different from this gentleman. And he's a guy who wants to get things done. And he can be impatient if you don't get things done. And and he wants to be seen to succeed. He's not a guy who wants to fail. Just take it in stride that it doesn't matter what you call him. Who you can call him until he left the social media. You guys were calling him everything. But a Jambazi government, or you guys used to run things. But I don't think this guy is sensitive to those things. And so I would think he would be different in terms of his the way he would run his government. But that does not mean we don't need that accountability. We still need accountability. We need oversight. We need more pressure. In this country, we have survived because of all that noise. The media, the parliament. The last few years, media went into bed. The government, parliament went into bed with the executive. Everybody went